Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Industry Talks. Today we have Brendan Egan. I know him because we actually worked on two projects together. He was the co-director of Graffiti, which was a short film that I was in, and he also was an extra in Defending Jacob. He's been into film since the very young age of 2 years old, but he's been acting since he was about 7. He just joined SAG-AFTRA in June, which is the acting union, and he's directed 10 films since 2018 and appeared in over 20 films since 2010. Although he has a minor limb deformity on his left hand, it has not stopped him pursuing his dreams of becoming an actor, writer, filmmaker, and director. Get ready, everyone. Here he is. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to Youth Industry Talks. Today we have someone super exciting. Brendan, here he is to tell everyone a little bit about himself.
Hello, my name is Brendan Egan. I am an 18-year-old SAG-AFTRA actor, writer, director. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades at this point. And I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I am glad to be here on Youth Industry Talks today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So my first question is kind of like the question everyone gets, and it's kind of annoying to answer, but I always ask it first. What made you want to act, be a filmmaker, write all of that at first? And then what made you kind of want to like switch and do it all professionally? And was it different for each aspect of the industry, or like did it all kind of happen at once?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's funny because for me, filmmaking and acting kind of go hand in hand with each other. So I kind of started out liking films and taking photos, and my mom was like, "Hey, he might be into like the film industry, and like that's something he might be into." And so I kind of went in the direction of acting because I was kind of set on that path, and I went for a few auditions. I remember my first audition was like my first actual audition was for the movie Ted, and that was pretty cool. And from there on out, I was just kind of like, yeah, this is something I want to get into.
Oh,
So,
that's super cool. So when did you start acting? Like how old were you?
um, when I started, kind of had that passion. Well, I had a passion for like filmmaking when I was like just like taking photos when I was like 2-ish. So a lot of people are like, what, 2? But yeah, it was primarily just taking photos and yeah, so and then acting was I think I was 6 when I started. So yeah.
Wow, that's a long time. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Um, so do you have an agent or a manager? I forgot to ask you.
So I don't have an agent right now. I'm currently looking for one. So yeah, I'm reaching out to agents and seeing what happens.
That kind of brings up another question I always like to ask people is like, what have been the biggest struggles in trying to find like representation, and how have like you went about doing it? Because I feel like everyone's story of like trying to get an agent or manager is so vastly different depending on who you talk to. So like, how has it been for you like trying to find one?
Yeah, it's been kind of difficult, especially in the age of COVID, because COVID has put like it's really just put a hold on the whole industry in a sense. So a lot of agencies aren't accepting clients as regularly as they would have pre-pandemic. So yeah, it's been a bit difficult, but hopefully I get there at some point.
Yeah, it's not fun to find like an agent
Yeah,
or manager. It's definitely not like the most fun thing to do. But yeah, everyone, I always ask people because it's like everyone's like journey with trying to find one is like very different. And also like in COVID, since you started acting before COVID was even a thing, because when I like got real professional, I actually like started almost in the pandemic. Like when I started doing it, like auditioning professionally was like in the pandemic. So I've only ever gone on like 2 in-person auditions, like ever. So like
yeah.
most of my understanding of the industry is how it works now. But like how like what were the pros and cons of like COVID in terms of the industry, like for you?
Um, well, I would say in terms of filmmaking, it's definitely like it's harder to kind of organize a production. Um, but in terms of acting, I got to say I do like the COVID checks. Like you have to go for a COVID test prior. and they have to pay you for that, and I'm just like, yes. Um, so yeah, that's amazing. I love that. But no, I would say being on set for acting, it's kind of like you have to wear a mask, and it's different than being on set pre-pandemic. I would say it's definitely more difficult for filmmaking though, because you kind of have to organize and plan accordingly and hope that everything goes to plan. So yeah.
For auditioning, do you have like a preference over self-tape or in person?
For acting or for
For
filmmaking?
acting.
Oh, for acting. To be honest, I've kind of grown to like self-tapes. They're pretty fun because if you screw up, you don't have to say, "Hey, hold on one second, I'm gonna do that again." Um, but I do like that kind of thrill of going in person and auditioning in front of like a casting director, and because it helps you improve on the next audition.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I've definitely grown to like self-tape. But having an in-person audition every now and then wouldn't be too bad. And I think they've started to come back a little bit. I've heard like for commercial, especially, I think it's starting to come back more, but self-tape is going to be around forever. So
Correct.
it's not
Yeah.
really going anywhere. But speaking of auditioning for like acting, do you have a quote unquote process? Or like how do you go about like doing self-tapes now, I guess?
For self tapes, like I have a backdrop and I have lights and all that good stuff. But it's funny because I feel like I have more time to process it, do like the character, and I wouldn't necessarily say they're quirks, but just kind of like what makes the character, the character, because you can really process it without having to worry about going in for the audition.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say it gives me more time to process what I'll be acting out in the scene. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. And then also going off like the way you kind of go about things for it's obviously very different for filmmaking and acting to like completely like behind camera in front of the camera. But
Sure.
for directing and writing, how do you do that? Do you have like a process? Do you like always work with a group of people? Do you start by yourself? Like how does that work? I'm definitely not as know anything about that.
Yeah, it's funny because yeah, in a sense, they're the polar opposite. But then again, they do kind of go hand in hand with each other because if you act first, you're kind of getting a film school education in a sense because you see what happens behind the scenes. You know what, like let's say a gaffer does or a director does. Um, so that definitely helped me kind of find a passion for filmmaking. And I do work with kind of like a group of people. It depends on the project. If it's like a really personal project, I will tend to not work with a group of people just so you can give it your attention, your full attention. And so I don't know, it depends on the project, but and then also for writing, like when you write, you kind of want to think like how the character would think, and the rest is easy because you're just writing what the character would do. And it's kind of the same for acting because when you act, you're kind of in the environment and you're just trying to do and emote what the character feels. And so, yeah, it's kind of like the same thing, but kind of different.
For writing, do you because I know I've written like a little bit and everyone the way they do it is like slightly different. Do you try and do like a lot of planning before and like character analysis before, or do you just try and like write and then keep editing off of that one thing that you wrote? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I know a lot of people plan ahead of time. Um, but I just kind of go in. I think of if you have strong characters, you have your film because everything's going to play off of each other, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I just go in and I write. I write how I think the character would feel. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Right.
That's cool. I think that's the way, like I said, I've only written a little bit. I've never like done anything with it, but I do write sometimes. And I am kind of the same way. I write with one of my friends, and she always tells me, she's like, you can plan, but like don't do it too much. Like just write anything. And even if it is the worst thing you've ever written in your entire life, at least you have something down that you can edit off of, and it's not just like a blank page.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, Okay, so now I have to ask you about graffiti a little bit because we did that
Okay.
together. So I have to ask like a little bit.
For
How
sure.
was that brought up to you? How did you get involved? Like, I mean, I know some of these answers, but not everyone else does. So I'm gonna ask anyway. How did you get involved with it? What was kind of like your involvement in graffiti, I guess?
Well, first, I want to say you were amazing in that film. You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, that one, Charlie Norton, who I had met at a film festival like a year prior to when we shot it, um, he he had this script that a relative of his wrote, and he's like, "Hey, check it out," you know. And I had read the draft, and I'm like, "Okay, you know, I think it's a good script." And then he wrote a draft of it for school, and I was like, "Oh wow, okay, that's like definitely an improvement. I like it." And then he asked me to come on board after reading like a few of my scripts, and I was like, "Okay, sure." Um, and when I came on board, that one, it kind of went from a dramatic telling of a principle to kind of a psychological thriller. Uh, and yeah, I think all of our visions kind of came together and collided to make a chaotic psychological, you know, film.
Yeah, that, and I can say I was there. I was there for, we only filmed for 2 days, which is insane. And I was there for the
Insane.
first day. I was there for the
Insane.
second day. I think it was like, I was like 12 hours each day or like 14 hours each day or something like that.
It
Well,
was
for
nuts.
you, it was probably more, but for me,
Yeah.
it was a little less. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
it was an insane day. But anyway, I can say I watched you in your element and you do everything and you're just amazing. Like I had complete trust that it was gonna like turn out great because like I will say sometimes you do student films or like you look at things like, oh, how is this gonna turn out? I had no question. I was like, this is gonna look amazing. Like I I just knew exactly what you guys were going for. And I like, anyway, you did a great job. I
Oh,
think I might have
thank you
told you
so
this,
much.
but you did, yeah. I was
And
so
same for
proud.
you as well.
Thank you. I was so proud to be a part of it. And Charlie's obviously amazing. He was the
Yeah,
director. Yeah.
definitely has
Um,
good.
okay, and now moving a little bit into like the industry as like a whole and like being keeping in touch with like the name of it, youth industry talks. Um,
Sure.
so what do you think like young people, our generation, people like growing up in the industry have to offer the industry as a whole, whether it be like in front of the camera or behind the camera?
Um, I definitely think diversity is something that the new generation can bring. Especially going through like the COVID pandemic and just everything it brought, just like we have diverse voices, whether that be through acting, writing, directing, and it's something that like an older generation didn't experience. So whether that be through, like I said, acting, directing, we have something that can be brought to the table and kind of shown through our unique voices.
Yeah,
If that makes any sense.
no, it
Yeah.
does. It does. It does. I love that. There's something I brought up with, I think I brought up with like two or three people on these. One of them, I think she was the first one I did. Her name is Michaela Lizak, and she's a writer. And we were talking about writing for teens, like a teen character, if that makes sense, or like someone like under the age of like 20 or like 25 or something. And how oftentimes it's written by a very older dominated group of writing people. And
Yeah.
I was just wondering your take on how it is like writing, especially for like young people, because teen shows are a huge hit. I mean, half the things we probably both auditioned for are like teen shows, coming of age
Yeah.
movies, things like that. And you are a teenager, you're 18. I played a teenager in one of your movies, like you know what I'm talking about. And something I brought up a few times was having teenagers in writing rooms, even if it's like a huge high budget like TV show, movie or something like that. And something I always thought of was like, even if you don't credit like a bunch of teenagers, just put out a survey, be like, reach out to some agencies and be like, hey, do you have any teenagers who have like even a tiny bit of writing experience who could like give us some like, you know, input on what it's like to be a teenager and like writing for teenagers and like movies and stuff like that. Um, I don't know. I always bring that up with people to see what like they think about that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I actually never thought of that. But yeah, that would be a great idea. I think that's where people like you and I come in, where people who are cast in these roles kind of give it um, an organic feel as to how the character should be portrayed, whether that be through, improvising a scene or, you know, taking personal life experiences and implementing that into the character. So yeah, I think in terms of acting, I would say, yeah, just giving it a piece of what you feel is natural for, the character. But for writing and directing, I feel like, yeah, I do think that there should be some like youth input to the characters, because how will it feel natural? I mean, there's people that, you know, like Netflix, they'll cast like a 26-year-old and like a 13-year-old's role. And I'm like, well, like, not only is it an adult, right? Like an adult's writing their lines, and you have like a 26-year-old playing the part. So like, but yeah, I do think that, like you said, a writer's room would be really cool with teenagers.
Yeah. And I feel like that could also go with like a lot of different things, like writing from whatever point of view you're writing from, maybe have people that have actually experienced it there, which I know some people do anyway. I'm not saying that all
Yeah,
productions and things don't do this, but I think more and more, especially with our generation, we're realizing like having authentic people writing these stories and telling stories depending on whatever subject it may be, having like authentic people to give their take or their input on it, and not just people who are making it up who may have never experienced something like this. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
so yeah. And one other question that I meant to ask you earlier, I don't know why I didn't. What was your first on-set experience for like anything, whether it's acting, writing, filmmaking, anything, like your first time on a set?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Okay, so I have two. There's two that come to mind.
Okay.
One was for like a PSA video. Um, and the other one, like an actual motion picture, was for this Oscar-winning masterpiece called Tape. Yeah,
You were in that?
yeah. Unfortunately, I was, but it was just kind of like a background part. But that experience was just kind of like, sure, it was kind of like a non-union thing, and it looking back now, I'm like, oh man. But especially for Tape. But no, it was such a great experience. I met so many people. I actually met one of my frequent collaborators on that set, and what was that, like 9 years ago almost? So so Jack Bernal, I don't know if you've heard of him. Yeah, he I met him on that set what, in like 2013. It was something like that. And yeah, so we've been like friends and like collaborated ever since. So
Wow.
it kind of laid the groundwork out.
Oh, that's so, yeah, that's cool. I think I've a lot of people have said that like their first on set, like a lot of their like beginning projects or even things they do now, they're not like necessarily like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever been a part of. But it's like it's always just fun to do. Like, and you meet so many people and like you make connection. It's also just like fun to be on set.
For sure. Yeah. No, for sure. It's
Yeah.
and then you just kind of want more of it too. So it's like especially like if you work for 5 days on a film and then it wraps up, you're just kind of like, ah, you kind of want that next I wouldn't say hit because it's not a drug, but it's you want that next kind of fill. You want to feel fulfilled in
Yeah.
that sense.
hmm I feel the same way, especially like when you work on something for like a few days in a row or something, especially if it's like you're just a supporting character on a feature or it's a short film, like you're never really working that long. The days are
Yeah,
long, but it's not many days, but if you know what I mean. So
for
like
sure.
once you hit that like third or fourth day, you're just getting used to everybody. You're like, oh, this is so fun. Like you're getting into the hang of it. And then it's like, okay, and that's a wrap. And you're like, oh, now I'm done. Like now I have to find something else to do. Like, what am I gonna do now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tough, but then when you find that next gig, it's just like, yes.
Yeah.
So,
And then what was your favorite, one of your favorites? I hate, I can never pick favorites. So what was your one of your favorites, like on-set experiences again for if you were an actor or a writer or director or all of it?
in terms of acting, uh, geez, there's been so many. Um, I would say this year was probably I did this like film called About Fate, and that was pretty fun. And then like a week ago, I just did not a week ago, like 2 weeks ago, I was in this Ryan Reynolds movie, just as kind of like a featured background. Um, that was cool. So I don't know, it kind of all blends together, but yeah, there's been quite a few this year that I'm like, oh, that was really fun. Um,
And obviously none of them have come out yet, right? Because you just filmed it this year. Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't think any of them. I think the closest one, I was like a background in Dexter, which is coming out, I think, in November. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Can you say what episode you're in? No,
I don't
maybe.
even know what episode they
Oh,
shot
okay.
so many scenes, but like they shot like I don't even know how many scenes because I worked a few days on it. So there's like a few different scenes.
Oh, that's cool. I think I know a few people that were in that from yeah. Oh my gosh, actually, I do know a few people who were in that. Yeah, it hasn't come out yet though, right? November. Isn't
I
it
think
like
so.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll watch it because I know another person that's in it. Great. Yeah. So my last thing is kind of a wrap up. Any words of advice to aspiring or people who are already an actor or a filmmaker or a writer?
Um, who are already a actor and right? Okay.
Either people who are like aspiring to be or are already like doing it.
Okay. Yeah. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Meet people and make connections. I think that's kind of a universal piece of advice because you need connections to kind of you know take on the next project and so meet new people and just kind of go more in depth with how you can improve as either an actor, director, writer, get advice and yeah, I would just say see how you can improve both externally in terms of like friends, family, get their advice and then like, yeah, I don't know, kind of craft that.
That's awesome. And then my last thing, any like promo, anything coming out, things to watch, like Instagrams, websites, anything.
Yeah. So yeah, I can give you my Instagram. It's hi Brendan 101. I made it in seventh grade, so I don't know how that's still my name on Instagram. And then I also have a filmmaking one called Vegan Film Stuff. It's like spelled Began Films Stuff. Once again, I don't know why I made um but yeah, those are my two kind of like Instagram handles. And then I also run two film festivals. So if you want to, link that. But yeah, so definitely. And thank you so much for having me
Yeah, of
today.
course. Thank you.
Sure.
This was great. So yeah, that was my talk with Brendan. It was great to catch up with him since I haven't really talked to him that much since we wrapped graffiti like almost a year ago. But it was great to talk to him and to hear his input on everything he does in the industry. He's done so much. He's only 18. He's directed, written, acted, everything. He had so much input, and it was just great to talk to him. I could have talked to him for so much longer about a million other things. But everyone go follow him on Instagram. Check out all of his stuff. I'll leave the links to his 2 film festivals he runs in the description, as well as his Instagram and other links and handles and websites and everything. But yeah, stay tuned.